and thanks for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name is Luke Stera. Let's take a look at our top stories today. There were very few surprises when it came to Nebraska's congressional races. Republican Senators Deb Fischer and Pete Ricketts both won their primaries, one of the rare occasions when both senators in a state were on the ballot at the same time. Both were challenged from the right, Fischer by Central Nebraska farmer Aaron Kowalski, Ricketts by Omaha resident John Glenn Weaver, and fellow Republican from Bushnell, Mac Stevens. Fischer will now likely face nonpartisan former union boss Dan Osborne in the general election, who plans to turn in signatures to run as an independent, possibly with Democratic backing this fall. As for Ricketts, his challenger for the final 2 years of former Senator Ben Sasse's term will be Preston Love Jr., a civil rights leader from Omaha who ran in 2020 as a write-in candidate. Meanwhile, in Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, Republican U.S. Representative Don Bacon fended off a challenge from his right flank by Omaha businessman Don Fry. Bacon will next face off against term-limited State Senator Tony Vargas in what many believe will be the most competitive race in Nebraska this fall. Elsewhere in the House, Representatives Mike Flood and Adrian Smith both cruised to victory, with Flood defeating former gubernatorial candidate Michael Connolly to set up a matchup with outgoing State Senator Carol Blood, and Smith easily defeating Hastings businessman John Walls and Robert McCuston of Holdridge. A Northeast Nebraska state senator looking to get elected for the first time appears to have some ground to make up heading into the general election. State Senator Rob Dover of Norfolk and former Northeast Community College board member Gene Regal advanced out of May's primary. But it was Regal picking up more votes than the incumbent, securing about 180 votes more than Dover, who was appointed to his seat in 2022 to replace current Representative Mike Flood. Dover is one of 3 appointed legislators looking to secure their first election victory. Lower Elkhorn Natural Resources District board member Melissa Temple finished 3rd and was eliminated. And voters in a Northeast Nebraska town are rejecting a measure that would have saved a long-time local venue. A $1.6 million bond measure in Hartington failed Tuesday, 357 to 231. Had the bond passed, the money would have been used to move and renovate the Skylawn Ballroom. Owners of the ballroom have said they need to either move or demolish the building to make way for their business expansion. The ballroom has served as Hartington's main event center since the 1950s. The city didn't come up completely empty on Tuesday. Voters in the Cedar County town gave the go-ahead for a $1.1 million bond to build a new city shop. And a Northeast Nebraska mayoral race is down to an experienced city lawmaker and one of the city's most vocal residents. Jim McKenzie and Shane Clausen advanced to the general election in November's Norfolk mayoral race. McKenzie, a former city employee who has been a vocal opponent of city spending, particularly its use of tax increment financing, garnered the most votes on Tuesday with over 2,300. Clausen, a Norfolk City Councilman since 2019, finished 2nd with over 1,700 votes. Scott Williams, a political newcomer and local business owner, was eliminated after finishing in 3rd. Jay Beckby and Jackie Cranston appeared to be poised to advance to the general election in the race to become the next Hastings mayor. The Adams County Election Commission released the unofficial primary election results late Tuesday night. Beckby outpaced Cranston by just 16 votes, or 0.3%. Bill Heitzman finished about 120 votes behind Cranston and won't advance to the general election. The winner of the general election will replace Corey Stute, who is not running for re-election. After all the dust has settled for the May primaries, voters had the chance to try out the new voter ID laws throughout Nebraska. With Tuesday being primary day for the state, some minor differences made the voting process slightly different for citizens. This is the first year the new voter ID law will be implemented. People are now required to show a form of identification to verify themselves before they head to the polls. Because of the shakeup in the process, officials were pleased at how smooth things had gone.
I'm feeling real confident in how things are running, my election workers, and how well they're doing. If they do have questions, they reach out to me here at the office, and we resolve it for them at that time. So I'm feeling really good.
The work of our elections officials across the state, the county clerks, the county election commissioners, they're working very hard to assure that this is a smooth running election. And that this, which is our first election where voter ID is part of the process, that runs smoothly. And so far as we can tell at this moment, in the midst of the day, it is running very smoothly. And that is a credit to the elections officials in our counties across the state of Nebraska.
Tuesday morning, Secretary Evnen sent out a press release with estimates of voter turnout. Projections reached around the 35% mark for the primary elections, and Evnen believes that just because IDs are now required, he doesn't believe this will affect the amount of voters in Nebraska.
I don't think that it's going to have any impact in turnout. It isn't going to disenfranchise voters. People are aware of the requirement. 97 or 98% of our registered voters possess a state-issued photo ID issued by the DMV, and there are a number of other alternatives for people who don't possess that. So I don't see that it's having any impact at all in turnout.
I was pleasantly surprised of the number of people that automatically walked up to the clerks at that location and would present their IDs without any questions.
The 35% reached by Evnen's office is a culmination of many different numbers, including early voter requests, returns, and certain types of elections. They also looked at polls from the past and argue that numbers have stayed relatively the same despite the new voter ID law. High blood pressure and pulmonary hypertension, they both disproportionately affect women. And during Women's Health Week, experts caution that the condition is often misdiagnosed and the symptoms dismissed. Mandy Gaither has more on the signs of the disease and why they should be taken seriously.
It's a condition that causes the blood vessels in a person's lungs to narrow and thicken. Pulmonary hypertension is a progressive disease. One severe form, pulmonary arterial hypertension, can lead to heart failure and death.
The earlier you can detect a disease, the earlier you can treat it and you can prevent it from worsening.
Dr. Tim Lom with National Jewish Health says it's important for women to know the risk and the symptoms of the disease, which include shortness of breath, fatigue, weight gain, swelling of the abdomen or lower extremities, chest pain, and irregular heartbeat, all of which Lom says are nonspecific and could be dismissed or misdiagnosed as another condition.
Providers think patients have more common entities such as asthma or sometimes even anxiety. So misdiagnosis is very common. And again, that's a problem because we're dealing with a disease that is progressive. If left untreated, things will get worse.
Lom says there are about 15 FDA-approved drugs to treat this disease, and a novel medication was also just approved. But work is still being done to develop targeted therapies to prevent or stop the disease from progressing.
It is treatable, and we really encourage patients to seek medical care as soon as possible.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
And the TikTok ban saga continues, as now a group of TikTok creators are suing the federal government over the new law. The group, who have around 1 million followers, claims the law would keep them from creating and sharing material through their publisher, as well as viewing content from other users. Unconstitutionally overbroad is how they describe the law, and say it will inflict immediate and irreparable harm. It's now the second lawsuit filed against the government over the ban. Last week, ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, sued the government, alleging the new law violates First Amendment rights. President Joe Biden signed the legislation last month that requires the sale of TikTok to new owners, or it will be shut down in the U.S. And childcare continues to be a financial burden for parents across the state. And a new report shows it costs double the rent in Nebraska. That's according to the Child Care Aware of America's latest annual report released Wednesday. If you have 2 kids in one of 11 states, childcare costs at least twice as much as your rent. Nebraska is one of those 11 states included, which has 2 of the state's neighbors, Kansas and Iowa, listed as well. In every other state in the U.S., placing 2 kids in child care center costs at least a quarter more than your average rent. And if you have a mortgage, the child care bill exceeds annual typical mortgage payments in 45 states, according to Child Care Aware. Nationwide, the average annual cost of care rose to nearly $11,600 per child last year. And while summer may not be here yet, AAA is warning travelers, be prepared for the rest of the vacationers on the roadways. Nearly 44 million Americans are gearing up to travel for Memorial Day weekend, which is the second highest forecast since 2000. In the west-north central region, which includes Nebraska and 6 other states, just north of 3.6 million are expected to make a trip, an increase of almost 4% from last year. And road trips are set to exceed last year by more than 100,000. Airports are the same, with a jump of almost 5% of flyers, and it could be the most crowded at airports seen since 2005. And in the sports world, the state's best track and field athletes will be in Omaha Burke Stadium starting on Wednesday. Classes A and B will compete Wednesday and Thursday, while C and D will get into the arena Friday and Saturday. And don't forget, News Channel Nebraska will be there for the finals on Thursday and Saturday, and you can all watch it live here on NCN. And be sure to stay up to date with the latest news from the Cornhusker State. Visit newschannelnebraska.com and click on the News tab. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram as well. Hope you have a good day, and thanks for joining us here. This is News Channel Nebraska.